Lots of ifs and buts through the course of that game, but at the end, it was Sri Lanka who silenced just about everything and finished it off with a clinical run chase. There were no real heartaches, no real roller coaster moments in that run chase. Yes, they lost a couple of early wickets, lost the openers, but the DJ man, Dhananjaya De Silva, 66 not out of 42 deliveries, possibly an unlikely hero. We talked so much about the likes of Rajapaksa and Pathum Nissanka and Charit Asalanka, but it was De Silva who did the job, picked up a wicket when he bowled, and certainly there won't be too many contenders, if any, for the player of the match in this particular game. A 6-wicket victory for Sri Lanka, and at least pushing them up with a fair likelihood of a top 4 finish at least, if not further than that. Here on Cricbuzz Live to look back on that, and more importantly, in a few moments' time, looking ahead to New Zealand taking on England. Again, a possible do-or-die encounter. I'm joined by Joy Bhattacharjya and Michael Vaughan. Joy, we thought that Afghanistan could have a fight, the spinners, but I think Sri Lanka had a plan and they stuck to it.
Absolutely. I think they stuck most importantly to their plan. Secondly, one of their batters went on and played a long innings. He scored 66 runs, which is 38 more than the top Sri Lankan the top Afghanis batsman got. And I think that is the difference for an experienced test side. One of the guys going on to get a 50, 60, 70, and you're going to win this game. Any chase of about 100, 140 odd, if one guy gets a 50 or a 60, plays for 12, 13 overs, the game is over. And that's exactly what happened. Dhananjaya basically, once he played that innings, Asalanka was okay. Rajapaksa was 18, 14, got a few misses, got a few shots, but they then did not have too much to do. And in the end, they reached there quite comfortably. But his was the anchoring innings. And he also, if you stay on a pitch like this, you're also going to start getting runs faster. Because it's that kind of pitch. The more you play, the more you stay, the better you get it.
Michael, in your assessment of Afghanistan's batting, this is exactly the point you made. Top score of 28. One batsman had to go out there and get a 50 or a 60 or a 70, and everyone else with cameos is good enough. Sri Lanka did that.
Yeah, we said at the halfway house, we thought there were 15, 20 runs light. You need that one player. Dhananjaya De Silva just played a gem. It was a pure innings full of real clever play, but glorious stroke play. The two spinners that we highlighted in terms of Rashid Khan and Mujeeb, particularly Mujeeb in the power play, I thought it was magnificent. That delivery that he bowled early on was a peach. So the spinners kind of worked for Afghanistan. I just hope Rashid Khan is okay. I've heard Nasser on commentary talk about Simon Jones. I was playing in that game in 2002 when Simon Jones did his knee. That outfield is it's so thick and sandy that you can get your knee stuck in the surface. So I hope Rashid Khan is okay. Rashid Khan was fired up. We saw him getting a bit grumpy at the end of his spell when he thought that umpire's call went against him. He gives so much to the game. He's such a competitor. But Sri Lanka will be delighted. They have still kept themselves with a little bit of a hope. They'll now be sitting in the stands with the New Zealand flags and the scarves and start singing a few New Zealand songs to hope that they beat England this evening.
Yeah, it's lots to play for. There is actually a scenario, Joy, where we could have 3 teams on 7 points each, lots of permutations, combinations. Then, of course, it gets down to that dreaded net run rate.
Yep. And net run rate, it's surprising. When you have a group with so many washouts, you normally think that, washouts create those odd matches and therefore point-wise it goes out. But there have been so many washouts that it's sort of evened out. So everyone is coming back to net run rate. And I think just Afghanistan didn't look 144. We always knew if Sri Lanka was sensible, they'll get it. And I think that was the way they played. And for me, the over was that 11th over where Rashid Khan bowls. Because if you see the run rate out here, that 11th over is when he goes for 14 runs to Dhananjaya and Asalanka. And that's where I think they started controlling the run chase. From then on, I think though Rashid Khan got a couple of decent overs back, it was never the same. I think they were always ahead of the game after that, Sri Lanka.
And looking at these numbers, Michael, it's really the back half that has been completely won by Sri Lanka. There's not too much to choose between the teams at the halfway point, but 36 for 2 plays 55 for 1, and 40 for 5 plays 30 for 1. That's the difference right there.
Yeah, and also I think that, we spoke about, teams winning by batting first in this tournament. When you're chasing a relatively lowest total, you can just settle in. You don't really have to risk too much. You saw the power play from Sri Lanka. They did nothing. They just sat in there. What did it go for? 28. So they didn't risk too much at the top end, get wickets in hand, and they just kind of worked out if they could get one of their top players to a score and an individual score of 50 plus, they were going to probably get over the line quite convincingly, and that was the case. Dhananjaya was that player today. Yeah, a good chase. It was a very, you'd say, kind of a mature chase. They didn't risk too much at the top, and they just played sensibly, particularly against the two outstanding spinners. And at the end, they started with some nice boundaries. They targeted the right bowlers at the right time to the right boundaries. It was a smart chase.
Yeah, they look like the Asian champions we talked about. What would this do to the points table? They have jumped to third place just for the moment. Remember, England taking on New Zealand later. But we'll have a look at the points table in a moment. But Joy, what it does mean is that Afghanistan, in all probability, obviously will be looking at the exit door. But Sri Lanka just keeping themselves alive at the moment.
Yeah, they're alive. They're definitely alive. And if you look at how they went to the Asia Cup, their graph started like that. They crushed in the first match by Afghanistan and then slowly made their way up and became champions. So I think this side is a resilient side. And what's happened with Sri Lanka, if you look at that Asia Cup, again, I go back to that, is that every match, one guy's put up his hand and said, I'm going to do it. And today, two guys put up their hand. I think Hasaranga bowled absolutely brilliantly for them. And, that 20th over, controlling over 3 runs in the final over. I mean, any captain, forget the 2 wickets, it's not so important. But the wickets made sure that only 3 runs were scored. And that is the difference between 144 and maybe 155, 156. And those are the kind of little things that has happened. And then Dhananjaya has come and played along. So every day, somebody's putting up their hand to say, I'm going to help you guys win. And I think that is the Sri Lankan strength that, they've been knocked out so many times and have sort of made their way back. That's their strength. They're a dangerous side. I don't think they're a consistent side as yet. They don't have the class to be that consistent. But they have those kind of weapons that on one particular day, they could upset anybody.
I must confess, when I was jumping the gun about looking at the summary of the match and seeing what Dhananjaya de Silva did, picked up a wicket, got a 50, finished things off in style. Michael, I completely forgot about the man who set up the victory, who of course has been awarded player of the match, Wanindu Hasaranga.
Yeah, ridiculous figures, really, going at 3.25 over 4 overs. They used him nicely. They used him in 1 over burst at the right time. Yeah, he's up there with Rashid Khan as the 2 probably best leg spinners, mystery spinners in the game at the minute. They've just got the knack of knowing when to bowl the right deliveries at the right time. They can pretty much bowl throughout the whole of the 20 overs, depending on what the captain or the team needs, and they're always going for wickets. You can see teams now. You look at the way teams are playing Rashid Khan. They're almost saying, okay, if we can knock him for 24 and only lose 1, hopefully no wickets against him, we'll take that. So they're not risking a great deal. That's why when you see someone like Hasaranga start to bamboozle, that's why I like seeing someone like him bowl the last over of the game, the last over of the innings, because you can see that he's got this great skill and this great mind of knowing exactly what the bat is going to do. And he just, as I said at the halfway, he just seems to deflate the ball. He just seems to be able to get this floating kind of flight through the air with that little movement either way. Very, very difficult to find. And it's not just his bowling, it's his batting, it's his fielding, it's his energy, it's his competitive nature that he brings to the side. He's a wonderful cricketer.
Yep, and he's led Sri Lanka to a couple of points there. So what does it do now to the points table? Sri Lanka now have got into third place with 4 points and 1 game to play. So they can get to 6. Now, we were talking about the scenario of 3 teams on 7. That, of course, was England, Australia, and New Zealand can possibly be those 3 teams. But England have to start by winning against New Zealand. Then they get to 5. They win their last match, they get to 7. And then New Zealand, Australia have to have those appropriate results to get everyone to 7. But Sri Lanka, they can get to 6. They'll definitely need to see other results going their way, Joy.
Absolutely. They can't do it on their own now. Now they'll have to depend on other results. But I think they would feel that they've at least done something in the tournament. They've given it. They've won 2. They've lost 2. They've stayed in the fight. And I think they've probably done enough to, just have done enough to stay in the top 4. And I think that's an important thing for them. To stay in the top 4 means not playing qualification that year. That's what they're going to look at. One of the things that I wanted to go back on about is that, we talk about players making plans beforehand and bowling plans being decided beforehand. And here's what I want to say. Mujib has bowled an absolute stunning first over. Comes back, bowls 3 in the top 6. Okay. Then, as you see, the game slowly starts to unravel. They bring back Rashid Khan. They bring in Rashid Khan. He gets a wicket in his first over. But then they start playing him out because they know they have enough time. And there's not enough pressure being exerted at the other end. By the time they bring back Mujib, It's a 17th over.
18th, 17 or 18, yeah.
17th or 18th over. He gives away 13 runs, but the game is over by then. And here's my point. There are a lot of teams when they make these set plans about, okay, Mujib is going to bowl here, here and here. I mean, I wanted to ask Michael, wouldn't you have bought Mujib back when you thought that Dhananjaya was going in that 12th, 13th, 14th over? Would you have said that, if I don't get this guy now, there's no point getting Mujib back in the 18th?
Yeah, absolutely. I thought, the decision to make was around the 9th, 10th over mark because you could clearly see what was happening. You could clearly see that Sri Lanka was setting this platform and they weren't risking too much. So what you have to do then is realise that you've got to bowl them out. You've got to get your best bowlers on early because, when you kind of defending such a total that generally if you're going to chase that total down, it's not going to take you 20 overs. You're going to chase it down in probably 18.3, 18.4, something like that. So as a captain, you almost take 2 overs out of the equation because you know that you have to bowl them out quickly and you bowl your better bowlers a little bit sooner and you try and go about those kind of mechanics as a skipper. If you try and think of a lowish score that you're defending and you're thinking 20 overs, there's no point in saving your best bowlers to the last few because by then, as you say, the game's done and dusted. So you almost have to. I like Mujib in the first 6, bowling 3. Great, get ahead of the game and try and put them under pressure. You could argue that he bowled 1 too many in the first 6. You could argue that they could have kept 2 in that middle for Mujib, but I didn't mind it because they were trying to get wickets. They were trying to put pressure on Sri Lanka. They were trying to get the rate up. That's what they like to do: get the rate up, throw the ball to Rashid Khan. He primarily bowls his 4 in the last 10 for Afghanistan. You could say that someone like Rashid Khan could have bowled 1 in the power play. To try and get a couple of early wickets more than they did. So all these kind of situations need out-of-the-box thinking. And when you start looking at a team, and particular player like Dhananjaya, who was getting in, straight away as a skipper, you've got to think, right, I've got to get my best bowlers on because I need him out. Because if he's there in the 17th over, the game's done and dusted, whoever I bowl. So it's all about trying to get wickets, try and get the key players at the right time. And yeah, I thought they just left it a little bit late in terms of their kind of tactical side of defending that total.
Yeah, well, that's as far as Afghanistan are concerned. Sri Lanka is still very much alive, but so much will depend on this next key clash that's coming up. A lot was built up to England versus Australia. Big disappointment that not a ball was bowled in that particular game. But England-New Zealand, in the context of the way New Zealand started this tournament, beat Australia convincingly in the opening game, and England being one of the if not the pre-tournament favourite for this particular tournament, just gives that extra spice to England v New Zealand.
Yeah, and there's this little matter of 5 overthrows and, bats and a Kiwi-born person doing, a Canterbury-born player or a Canterbury player doing this to New Zealand. So, yeah, nothing there. Nothing to say. So, it's all good. It's all good.
Whichever way you look at it, Michael, I mean, you cannot forget July 2019. It's a different format of the game, but somehow parallels will keep getting drawn back there every time these two sides clash on a big stage.
Yeah, I mean, it's always going to be the topic, isn't it? Because of the drama of Lords 2019. But you forget New Zealand knocked England out last year in the semi-final. So, there's a little bit of blood there from the semi-final last year where England had the game won, and all of a sudden Mitchell produced some striking at the end. England's death bowling was very poor on that occasion. In the World Cup this year, their death bowling has been excellent. It's got better and better. Sam Curran has brought a different dimension to England's death bowling. England, I don't know what. If you look at England in white ball cricket since 2015, they've been the trailblazers in terms of aggression with the bat. They've been incredible. Owen Morgan, Trevor Bailey set this platform for English white ball cricket that has kind of just led the way for all players, knowing that if you want to get into this white ball group of England World Cup teams, just any teams, you've got to hit the ball hard. You've got to strike it well over 120s. Now, if you look back to that first game against Afghanistan, that has been the real surprise for me because they played so well against Australia in the warm-up games. They played brilliantly in Pakistan, played aggressively. Then all of a sudden, that first game, I watched them chase that low score against Afghanistan. It was like, that's not the England I know. They timidly got over the line there. Against Ireland, you look at the way that they batted against Ireland, right? The bowling let them down in the first 10 overs, in particular when it was doing all sorts at Melbourne. But the batting again was very timid. It wasn't an England white ball team that I've come accustomed to seeing over the last few years. So I'm intrigued to see how they go. But this pitch, and you look at who they're up against in Bolton Southey in particular, have been outstanding in this World Cup. There will be a bit of movement there. And if England go so hard so soon, they could end up being 3 wickets down quite quickly once again. So I'm intrigued to know which England are going to come out and bat. Will they play smart for a few overs and then go really aggressive, or will they go like the Owen Morgan way, which if you lose a game or two or you look like you're being timid, you go ultra aggressive? So I'm intrigued to know which England are going to go out and bat in particular today.
Well, I wonder if the captain will play a role in that, because still relatively new is Jos Buttler. Obviously, Owen Morgan had that huge impact that Michael was referring to. It dates back to 2015. When after their performance in that 2015 World Cup, they came back, they played a home series in England against New Zealand. Intriguingly, it was against New Zealand, and they sort of set the template there of the kind of 350 type scores that they would get, even if that 320, 330, 350 came in 42 overs and you were bowled out. So there again, the captain played a role. Jos Buttler as captain, still finding his feet in a sense.
Yeah, and I think so much depends on Buttler, because while the strike rate is, the average is not great, that strike rate, he's the kind of player who's their match winner. And he's perhaps the best, in my book, he's the best T20 batsman in the world at this point in time. I mean, he definitely is among the top three. On his day, he's the best batsman in the world. And his not being in form has also, played a part in this tournament, because he so much dominates up front when he's there. And that's not happening. You don't have Bairstow. And I think those are the kind of things that have changed. But yes, this is not an England side that ever plays a word. I mean, I was exactly the one word that, Michael referred to as a word I was timid. Timid is not a word you associate with England since 2015. Because, as you said, they'll be knocked out for 80 on one day, but most days they'll hit 350 because they will not stop scoring, even if batsmen are being lost at the other end. However, this is the kind of pitch in which perhaps you hold it in and wait for the balls to hit, because if there's any shape or movement, Bolt and South, they're going to get it. And if they get it, they'll get it in the first 2, 3, 4 overs. So, I mean, perhaps there is a case here to see how they're going to play those people.
Yeah, I referred to Morgan. It was almost a revolution, the Morgan revolution in ODI cricket, the Stokes era in Test match cricket. Does Buttler have it in him to become the captain of an England side that leads a revival, leading to a revolution in T20 cricket, as captain and also as batsman, Michael Vaughan?
Oh, I'm with Joe. I think he's the best player in the world in terms of striking in T20 cricket. I think it's always harder to come into a captaincy role when the team has had so much success before. Because where do you go to? Where can you take the team to? What more can you bring to a side that has played so well for such a long period of time? If you look at Ben Stokes in the Test match team for England were pretty much rock bottom. The way that they played in the Ashes last year, they lost in the Caribbean in the series over there for quite a few years. England's Test match team had been a side that you kind of didn't realise or look to see and think they knew which way they wanted to play. They kind of went a bit aggressive at one stage, didn't work, and then they went really defensive. That didn't seem to work. Lost some big series away from home, started to become inconsistent at home. So Ben Stokes had an easy hand really to come in and Baz McCullum and do something completely different. And we saw the kind of movement straight away. It's the same as after 2015, England's white ball team. They didn't have to do a great deal to kind of get us all thinking, yes, things are going to be different. So Jos has taken the England white ball team on at a time where everyone expects them to play great. Everyone expects them to whack it out the park, play aggressive. They've lost Johnny Bairstow. He's a big player. Not having Johnny Bairstow there, I think, is a big loss. He plays in the middle in T20 cricket. I do think they haven't quite got their tactics right with Malan and Stokes at 3 and 4. When you've got Moeen Ali, you've got Harry Brook, you've got Liam Livingstone, who are real strikers of a cricket ball early in an innings. They don't take too many balls to get going. I don't quite understand that combination of Malan and Stokes at 3 and 4. I think you need to break that up. So tactically, I don't think they've quite got it right. But one thing, I've been really impressed with the bowling. As I said before, England's problem has always been in 50-over cricket, if they've got a slight problem, and in T20 cricket, he's bowling at the back end of an innings. And I just think Sam Curran has brought something that's just been out of the box, very smart, very clever. He's played a lot of white ball cricket in all these franchise leagues, and he's getting better and better. So even though they've not been at their best in this T20 World Cup, I have liked the fact that they've found someone at the back end of an innings that looks like he could be around, not just for this World Cup, but for the next 50-over World Cup and many T20 tournaments down the road. So they have got something quite positive in Sam Curran, but It's the batting that needs to fire, and there's no better way to fire a team into action as you as the skipper who goes out there first to go and set the tone. It's the perfect platform for Jos Buttler today.
The platform, of course, is there, but it's about actually expressing yourself. And there are a few quarters that get the feeling that, he's probably expresses himself better when he doesn't have the added responsibility. There are some players who thrive on it. It's probably early to judge Jos Buttler on that, but, that could just be an answer long term.
Could be. Look, I'll tell you one thing. Their coach currently is a man called Matthew Mott. And Matthew Mott, firstly, two things. One is he knows these conditions very well. He's played for New South Wales for the longest time. And, New South Wales-Queensland rivalry, in the time that he was there especially, was a pretty active rivalry. Remember, those were the great Queensland teams who did very well. So Matthew Mott will know these conditions well. He'll know exactly what to tell his batsmen, as in advice to give his batsmen, how long the ball swings around here, what it does. He'll have a very good idea. Secondly, I think that's the thing, that you both have a new coach and a new white ball coach and a new captain, and both are feeling their way into the situation. It's always better if one of them is... In some ways, it's better if both come together, because then you build a new relationship from the scratch and it's good. But there's a tentative sort of feeling their way around each other, who is going to do how much, and I think they're going through that. And I think naturally, Matthew Mott, with the Australian women's team especially, he allowed the players a lot more room to establish themselves. He's not an authoritarian coach. By nature, he's a coach who's saying, here are the tools, I'm going to help you sharpen your tools, but you're the guys who are going to make the calls. And I think that is the interesting thing, how Jos Buttler takes that and says that, this is my team. Jos needs to own that team. You make a fair point. If he doesn't own the team or doesn't want to own the team, and there are lots of great players who don't. I mean, Jacques Kallis, Sachin Tendulkar, they weren't built for captaincy. But if he decides not to, he needs to call early. At this point in time, he's the man in charge.
Well, I'll give you one bit of, or two bits of news. One is, of course, that England have won the toss and decided to bat first. But before we see the teams, Michael, one of the things Jos Buttler said at the toss was, we're going to be flexible with the batting order and allow the batters who need to and giving the players the best opportunity to express themselves. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I pretty much guarantee that Milan-Stokes combination may be broken up today. Interesting that England, over the years, England have always won the toss and bowled. They've become a team that seem to be better at batting first and defending. Just with this, I just think with this bowling attack of Wood and Sam Curran, Wood in particular with his pace, but Sam Curran with his skill levels down the back end has given them more belief of being able to defend, and also the fact that it's a used pitch. Whether the dew factor comes into play, because I've done many Big Bash games at the Gabba where the ball skids on better later on at night and it becomes a chasing ground. But I think the fact that it's a used pitch, the fact that England feel more comfortable just at this stage in their development of getting runs on the board and defending it. So it seems a sensible decision that Jos Buttler's made.
Yeah, well, KW was candid enough to say he would have batted first as well, particularly being a used surface. They're playing on the back of a game that's just finished. But he needs to adapt, that's the word that Williamson used, to the fact that they're bowling first and work accordingly. Let's have a look at the New Zealand team first. This is how they line up. And it's an identical playing 11 from their last game. So pretty much they're looking at a combination that's worked for them. Glenn Phillips perhaps again key. But again, they've got so much firepower right up there. If Conway doesn't do it, Finn Allen's that kind of player. If anything, the only one who hasn't really stood up and made the opposition shudder is Williamson himself.
Yeah, but Kane, exactly. Kane is a calm kind of player. I was just looking at that bowling attack. This is a great bowling attack. But that is what is going to be key. How well does Jos Buttler play Saudi and Trent Boult up front? And how well do the likes of Moeen Ali, their hitters, Moeen Ali, I don't know if Salt is not playing perhaps, but their other batsmen, Liam Livingstone, Harry Brook, how well they attack the spinners in the middle. I think these are the two crucial battles for me. And they are frankly mouth-watering challenges, because this is one of the most destructive batting sides you have. And this is one of the most balanced bowling sides you have. So it's a mouth-watering contest for me. And with so much at play as well, it's a beautifully set up match.
It certainly is. The first 20 overs in particular will be the battle that Joy just mentioned. Let's have a look at the England lineup and bring Michael Vaughan in. We've probably put it down in the order that it was in the past. As Michael said, he guarantees it won't be Milan 3, Stokes 4. The other three names down there, Brooke, Ali, Livingston, even Curran. Remember, he's been used up the order both in franchise cricket and for England. So lots of options for Jos Buttler to see who's going to follow later in the order, Michael.
Yeah, lots of different combinations. I'm interested to see how Mitchell Santner goes, the left-arm spinner, because England have so many left-handers. And hitting it with the spin will be something that England will certainly try and target. Look, there's plenty there for England to work with. It's just whether they can find that mojo to go out and play an aggressive game to get that big score. If England can get that big score on this kind of wicket, they'll be very confident with their bowling attack of defending it. And on the back of that, that defeat to Ireland, the rain washout against Australia, England need a good performance today. They have to come out and play well. They have to obviously win the game, but they need a really good performance. And if they get that, they'll be confident that in that last game against Sri Lanka, being it the last game of the group, they'll know exactly what they need to do in terms of net run rate. We all expect Australia to beat Afghanistan in Adelaide. Even though that pitch generally can offer a little bit of purchase, I think Australia certainly will win the game. It'll be a matter of how well they win that game. So England will have an advantage knowing exactly what they need to do in that last game against Sri Lanka. But first and foremost, they've just got to play a more disciplined, aggressive game that we've been used to by an England side over many, many years. Can they find that mentality of knowing that? And generally, England have been very, very good in white ball cricket in particular over the last few years, that when it really matters, they've produced. That's what we've been accustomed to since around 2016-17 when it started to all get going with Owen Morgan. We've been so accustomed to when it really matters. You go back to the 19 World Cup that they won, they were pretty much out of that early in the tournament because they lost big games. They lost that big game against Australia at Lords, and I think it was against India at Edgbaston. They had to win. They had to win. If not, they were out of the tournament, and they blew India away. And from then on, Jason Roy actually came back into the side from an injury, and they suddenly started to find their real flow of play. I get a sense today's that day that England have to find that flow of play.
Yeah, Michael, we like to use these little anagrams and little terms. I'm wondering if ever, when Ali and Root have had a partnership in the past, Michael, have they ever used the term mojo?
Well, they've had many partnerships. I'm not too sure how many more we'll see in terms of Joe Root and Moeen Ali, because Joe's obviously not in the T20s and Moeen doesn't play Test match cricket. So there's only one format really that they can get that partnership going now. That's the 50 overs.
But yeah, in terms of Kane Williamson, we looked at one captain. What about the other? Kane Williamson in T20Is, and this is what he's done in 2022. Firstly, T20s and in T20Is. Now, this is something that he'll want to look at. The strike rates in particular, obviously it's not that he's been a 150 type of player, but certainly under 100 or 103. He's a thinking cricketer, and he'll want to make some changes.
He'll want to improve. He'll want to see where he's going. I think what happens is, again, what is the kind of target England sets? If it's a 160, 165, 170 kind of chase, then he's a player they'll bat around. But if it's a 145, 150 kind of chase, Kane Williamson can take them home. He's that kind of player. And that's what he does best. I mean, leave that one blip aside, that 2019 IPL season where he got 635 runs. Otherwise, through his career, that's the anomaly. I mean, we look at it as that's what Kane Williamson can do, but he has never done that post that. He's really been a 115, 120, 125 player. I mean, he doesn't score faster than that. But there are targets, and this, if you go back to Dubai is not the kind of place where 120 to 125 strike rate might work. Here it might. And so I think he's still very crucial because he's quality-wise, obviously the best New Zealand batsman around in all formats, if you look at it that way. And if there is that kind of game where it's a bit tricky out there, Mark Wood is doing well with the ball, Sam Curran's doing well, he possibly is the guy who can still take them through. I still believe he's utter quality. He'll only be out of the game if it's a 180 chase. Then I think there are the batsmen who are more suited for those kind of hitting.
But looking a little bit ahead, I mean, we talk about the Fab Four. We know Virat Kohli is looked at as one of the greats in terms of playing all formats. Joe Root not playing the shortest format. Stephen Smith not finding a place in the T20 11 for Australia. What is the future for Kane Williamson, Michael Vaughan, in this format?
Oh, I'll be honest. I'm not too sure where those numbers stack up. I don't think those numbers are. They're quite obviously not great numbers. So he's pretty much in because of his tactical announced as a captain. He's obviously got a huge amount of respect in that dressing room, and the management side of individuals and players is so important. So he's very, very good at that. But in terms of the numbers that he provides, I'm with Joy. If it's a 150 chase, you want a Kane Williamson style play. If it goes beyond 170, 175, I don't think England will be too concerned about bowling at Kane Williamson in T20 cricket. The game's moved on. It's just moving on at a rate of knots that, I just think you need a batting lineup that's just got all the power. The one thing that I'll say in this World Cup, because the ball's been doing plenty, a Steve Smith style player, Kane Williamson style player, Virat style player, even a Joe Root style player would have been effective, because we're looking at scores of 150 being around average. So it really does bring in that kind of stylish player that just maneuvers the ball in the gap, striking at 120 but being consistent. There's really a place in every side for that style of play in the conditions that we've seen in this World Cup. I don't suddenly envisage that we're going to, in the last week and a half, start seeing, regular 200 scores, because we'll be on more used pitches, and, the weather in Australia. I've just seen a clip from Adelaide. I know it's meant to be better tomorrow. It's absolutely hosing it down in Adelaide today, and there's rain again in Melbourne. So they're just having a rainy season. So the 150 scores certainly suit a Kane Williamson style player, but he's not playing great. If you go back over the years in terms of watching Kane Williamson, he's just not playing anywhere near like I've seen him in the past. So he's pretty much in at the minute, hoping that he's going to be that glue of the chase at a 140, 150, but he's in more so for his captaincy and I guess for his man management of all the other players in the team.
Yeah, I've just come in last night from Australia, and trust me, it's a lovely place to visit generally every time I've gone there. But Joy, when the weather is not susceptible, it's just not hospitable at all, and it's been miserable and cold and wet.
I want to tell you that I'm not just here to talk about cricket. I'm here to look after my fellow panelists and analysts. And I had put out a request for everyone in Australia saying, get Harsha a monkey cap, because he's freezing out there. And all so, Michael, monkey caps are, the balaclavas that you guys wear from the, Crimean War. So ski jump, the kind of things you use, bank robbers. So that's a favorite thing for Bengalis, because they feel cold when the temperature is even 30 degrees. So all these Bengalis with monkey caps, we've asked, please send monkey caps for Harsha. Get him, get those ears warm, because, India needs Harsha. Already I saw, Sunil Gavaskar wearing his little beanie. So I said, the Indian brains need all the insulation right now. So I'm doing my job.
Yep, I had picked up a good, nice little tourism beanie as well, except it just messed up the hair. That's the problem with that. Beanies and hairstyle never go together. But one person who doesn't have too much problem with that is one half of the Mojo combination we mentioned. There is no Joe, there's just a Joss, but there is a Mo. And Mo could have a big role to play in the England side. Whether or not it's him who gets pushed up the order to solve that Malan-Stokes problem, or whether it's Brook, or whether it's Livingston, Moeen Ali will certainly have a key role to play. And Michael, he's almost sort of reinvented himself now that he's not playing test match cricket. We've seen him up the order in franchise cricket. We've seen him very flexible and certainly impactful.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big shout, but I reckon he's England's. And when you talk about Josh Butler being probably the best T20 player in the world, I think Moeen Ali times the ball as good as anybody. He's got an incredible ability to stroll out there and hit sixes pretty much from ball one. He's a wonderful striker of a cricket ball. I'll question whether England have maximised that striking prowess as well as they possibly could have done. I just wonder whether they could have moved him up the order a little bit sooner. Why wait down the back end of the innings? Why not throw him up a bit sooner and tell him to just go for it from the 8th over, the 9th over? Why not? I mean, that's pretty much what England have done for many, many years in white ball cricket. But you just look at that strike rate. 196 in the death overs. I mean, it's just remarkable hitting. He's got that ability to strike over the offside, over the onside. Brilliant hitter of spin. I guess the one area that you could target him with, and I guess particularly on a ground that's got one big sided there, if he's hitting to the big side, I think New Zealand will bowl short to him with the paces. They'll try and probably get Lockie Ferguson to go quite aggressive to him. So that's probably the one chink in his armour that you can potentially target, but he's a wonderful striker of a cricket ball.
Yeah, he's going to be key. Do you reckon, I mean, we're obviously going to keep a close eye on Jos Buttler's comment and being flexible with the batting order. He'd probably already have decided that in terms of who it is, who pads up, who gets ready to come in, possibly to follow the first or second wicket. But certainly, along with Brooke and Livingston, Moeen Ali, and he doesn't come out. I mean, Livingston comes out with that reputation. You know he's going to muscle you. But Moeen Ali doesn't necessarily come out with that reputation. He just, as Michael said, he just times it perfectly. And suddenly you've got 18 off the over.
I was just thinking of the irony of it, that, 2 years back, he was not even part of England's real white ball plans. Comes and plays a test match in India. The test match is dead. And he just hits towards the end, smashes it all over the place, hits 7 or 8 sixes, if you remember, in the test match. And immediately there's a convenient injury. He's kept on in the white ball side and he stays on and plays. And he never goes back. After that, he never goes out of the side. And it was a dead test match. So all these circumstances, sometimes it's just a matter of, taking your chances. And I think he did. The only problem England have about, floating Moeen Ali that far up front is he's also, if you look at that record, that 196 in death overs. And that means he's a classical finisher as well. That's the number that's important for them. And average of 37 means he doesn't that often get out. 187 runs in death overs means they probably need him there as well. And if they need him there as well, they might just be tempted to float, Livingston up front earlier or Harry Brooks up front and hold him back and say that, Moeen, we need you to finish. From the 15th onwards, that's when we need you in to come and finish. Not that I'm saying that he can't do it earlier, but other batsmen can do it earlier as well. I think he's a fantastic finisher for them.
Well, just a little bit of trivia here. As far as England's decision to bat is concerned, under Morgan, England became an extreme chasing side, so much so they didn't choose to bat first once after 2016. Jos Buttler has already done so 3 times in 2022. Of course, talking about this particular game, used pitch and all that, but when you go back to the stats, when you go back to the numbers, the entire chasing culture has given way to Buttler thrice opting to bat first. So overall, Michael, you can't really look at what a culture has been. You've got to look at the day, you've got to look at the circumstances and the fact that it's a used pitch. So right call for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sometimes, your side just transitions over time because of the different players that you bring in. At the minute, England's batting has not been as consistent as England's bowling in T20 cricket. And as we saw in Pakistan, on some of the wickets that you play in Pakistan, England became a side that became very good at defending. Have this Sam Curran ability I keep mentioning, but he's become an absolute wonderful, skillful left-arm seam bowler coming over the wicket, round the wicket. He's got this ability to bowl this quick bouncer, slow ball bouncer, bowls cutters wide of the off stump to the right-handers, getting them hitting to the side that they want. It's just amazing in cricket that you just go through these patterns of play when new captains come into play and new players that you suddenly become a better defending side than a chasing side. It's cricket. These things happen. No idea why. It's just the nature. And also teams become more confident doing one way or the other. And at the minute, this England side has become more confident by batting first and defending.
All right, Michael, I'm going to ask Joy to give us a reminder of the Joy Factor question, which many of you would have answered, but just in case you want to have another crack at it, while Michael starts contemplating just how many England are going to put on after opting to bat first. So, Joy, give us a reminder and then we'll have our own prediction.
Here's a question. A specific record has been achieved by 7 Indians, 5 batters, RP Singh and Ashwin, with apologies to Ashwin, he is an all-rounder, but the others just bat. What achievement am I talking about? That's all I can say. And it's a pretty significant achievement.
Significant achievement, 5 batters and RP Singh and Ravichandran Ashwin who have been left out of the mix. So is it a batting record? Is it a bowling record? Is it neither? You work it out. We're going to have some fun with that particular question. But the one we do have a lot of fun with is trying to get the numbers right. In the Sri Lanka-Afghanistan game, Joy had it spot on. 144, even though they had no business getting there in the last 3 overs. They still got there. At the moment, we're starting from scratch, England versus New Zealand at the Gabba. England won the toss, batting first. Possible changes in the batting order. Michael, I have a feeling you're going to go slightly high. How high?
I'm going to go 165.
I somehow had a feeling it was going to go a little higher than that. Are you going to top that?
I'm going to go higher. I think it's Jos Buttler's day. He's got to get off. He's too cool a batsman not to. And I think if Buttler gets off to a start, I think 175 is par for the course.
165, 175. Now, I didn't want to really squeeze in there. So let me just change the equation completely. and put on a Kiwi hat for the moment. Bit of movement, Bolt, Saudi, Ferguson with Moeen Ali. I'm not sure what Santner will have an impact with all those left-handers. We thought they'd get an off-spinner in, but they didn't. But I'll still go for New Zealand, not to necessarily win the game, but just to restrict England to 155. So we've got all the fives to play for. 155, 165, 175. Over to you, Jos Buttler. Over to you, England. It's going to be a critical game. England need the points, and there are a few other teams who are looking out for it as well. We'll see you in the 10th over on Cricbuzz Combox. Till then, from Michael, Joe and myself, we'll see you soon.